Dave Lalman. Dr. Lalman is a professor and extension beef cattle specialist at Oklahoma State University. Dr. Lalman holds an American Endowed Chair with split extension and research appointment. He works primarily in the beef cattle industry, focused on cow calf and stocker cattle production. His extension and applied research program includes beef cattle nutrition and management, with emphasis on beef cattle grazing and genetic by-environment interactions in beef production systems. His approach and goals are to provide producers information and decision tools to facilitate production system profitability, improve cow herd efficiency, and to improve product quality. At Oklahoma State, Dr. Lalman serves as the Animal Science Extension Program Coordinator and the supervisor to the Range Cow Research Center, North Range Unit. Please help me welcome Dr. Dave Lalman.
Excellent, thank you. So I wasn't texting my wife, I was setting my timer. And it keeps setting at 3 hours, 20 minutes. Thank you for the invitation. I did set it back at 40 bucks. Thank you for the invitation to be here. It's a real honor for us to get to visit with you all about some of these things. And I want to just start off with, see if I can figure out how to make this work. There we go. I want to share with you what I think should be our theme. If we're talking about building better cows, this should be your elevator speech. Okay, we're already good at this. And building better cows, we're really talking about just maybe improving upon this aspect of beef production using carbon dioxide of water and sunlight to produce tremendous profit. Okay, so if we're talking about building better cows, I mean, first thing I need to indicate, of course, is that the cow is a really important part of that whole process. It's still today, and I have a friend that's an ag economist been telling us for me for many years that controlling costs is the overriding factor for profitability of cow enterprise. Me as a kind of scientist, of course, I didn't really want to believe that, but she's been right all along. It continues to be the primary driver of profitability in cow operation. Not only that, but if you think about the cost of producing beef.
Test 1, 2, testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The cow enterprise uses 74% of the feed energy that goes into producing 1 pound of parts.
Testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Probably not the weather. So
testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
You must be on some sort of TV show or something. Okay, and then when we talk about cow efficiency, obviously there are a lot of ways to define this, to look at it. Are we looking at it? Depends largely on market endpoint. Really interesting conversation last night about the market endpoints. Are we talking about the beef production system as a whole, a ranch, a herd level efficiency, or the individual animals in order to try to improve on the herd level or the entire system level? We're talking about biological or economic efficiency. Most of my work is spent in the biological side of this, and of course we try to apply economics as much as we can in terms of determining ways to improve building a better cow, if you will. All of the definitions are going to include some, have some agreement of, what we need is a low level of inputs relative to outputs. That's the easy part. Maybe the only uniform thing on all those different definitions. This is the big picture. We've probably already seen this from someone, but our industry has improved tremendously in terms of, beef production per cow. And that comes from two general categories, and that is the improvement in genetics over time, along with improvement of, or adoption of technology in all segments of the industry, but more focused or intensified in the post-weaning phase of the beef cattle business. Okay, so now back to the cow-calf segment. And this is related to the comment earlier about controlling costs, driving profitability. This is a statement from Kennel and Herbal, published in 2021, Kansas Farm Management Association. And in their data, about nearly 62% of the variation in difference in profitability, and that is difference between low level or low third of their operations and profitability compared to the high third profitability. And that difference is $460, by the way, in this particular publication. But nearly 2/3 of it was explained by controlling costs, and a little over a third of it, I guess, was explained by more output. And output being a little bit improvement on fertility or reproductive efficiency, and increase in calf weaning weight, just a slight improvement in price received for those calves. Okay, kind of a similar data set. This is from the BIF program out of Minnesota, and you can see here big differences. And they divided their data set into low 20% profitability and high 20% profitability. So, you know, as you would expect, a much bigger or more dramatic sort there. And so you can see that feed costs per cow are $400 difference in just feed costs in that data set. And then feed cost on the way to calves sold is nearly doubled in a high cost or low profitability group. And so, you know, these feed costs, as Dr. Beverly mentioned, is a really big deal. It's an important part of this puzzle. Along with this, I should say,
Bill up here.
that, I'm not sure who my buddy is there. Hope he's gonna jump in and help explain something today. Weaning rate was improved, and the calves in the high profitability group were 39 pounds heavier. And so, yes, improving production or output is part of the picture. But in every publication I see, my colleagues been right all this time that controlling costs almost always trumps increasing output. They're all important. They're all important. Okay, just real quick, and I'm not a very good philosopher, but real quick, if you think about the whole farm level, and we'll restrict it to feed efficiency or biological component of this. Really, the four big contributors are shown here, right? And that is efficiency of the forage utilization, forage production and utilization. Many of you would recognize Bert Tiger, and he had told me for a long time. He said, Dave, the biggest improvement most ranching operations can make in building a better cow or improving cow efficiency is harvesting more of what they grow and growing it more efficiently. That is probably where there's tremendous low-hanging fruit still for a lot of us. But obviously, you know, very antagonistic to whole herd level efficiency is going to be reproductive failure. I mean, that goes without saying. Dr. Weber knows that. Really good data on that. And then herd health, same thing. You know, animals, fatalities, health issues, and so on are going to drag that number down as well in terms of efficiency. And then we get to the feed efficiency, the area that I work in. Is also an important part of this picture. of the digestive and metabolic efficiency of individual animals, and then also we can look at that on the herd, whole herd level. So let's just take just a minute and break down, the efficiency or utilization of energy. I mentioned that, earlier, the cow uses, or the cow calf enterprise uses 74% of the feed energy to produce 1 pound of carcass weight. So let's just take a look at the components of that. Okay, so if you had ruminant nutrition course, you've seen a graph very similar to this, right? And this is just a graph showing kind of the domino effect of how we're actually energy metabolism in a ruminant animal. And so right there at the top, see if I can trace the story. Right there at the top, we've got really what is feed intake. That's feed energy. If you take the total amount of feed that animal consumes, if you're able to put it in a bomb calorimeter and measure the calories that animal consumed, that's gross energy intake. Okay, and then obviously the first big loss is people loss, but it's, we wouldn't consider it in every case to be a loss because it's good fertilizer. So it does have value, no doubt about that. But in terms of individual animal efficiency, it represents the biggest loss. It can be from 15% approximately in a feedlot animal to up to 55% loss of that feed energy in a cow. Okay, and then we get to from digestible energy to metabolizable, you have gaseous loss. And there's a lot of people in this room that research is only busy measuring this component to see if we can improve on it. The federal government is really interested in this right now and kind of throwing money around to try to help us improve this area. And I think it is, I won't call it low hanging fruit, but it's an opportunity for us to improve here. Gas emissions in particular represent about 6 to 12% of those calories measured as gross energy. Okay, 6 to 12%. So, if we could just reduce that by half or even a quarter, we would definitely be making progress. We can find, kind of a logical way to do that in a cost-effective way. Okay, next you've got heat energy loss, and that's going to come from metabolism and fermentation. Yeah, the fermentation heat is helpful in the wintertime, especially if you live in a cold environment. But that's going to be a much smaller percentage of that loss. But the last thing I've got on there, once we get to net energy, is it's divided into maintenance energy and then productive energy or retained. Retained energy is that's used to produce milk, to produce a fetus, maybe to increase tissue accumulation in a cow, in other words, weight gain. All right. And so the maintenance requirement in the cow-calf segment is a big deal. Now, it's a theoretical measurement, and so it's difficult to nail down. It's really hard to measure. But it looks like, especially when we measure feed efficiency, what we're doing is basically we're going from here down to here. Okay, and we're skipping all the steps in between, and that's okay because we still get to a result that's going to help us make a better cow or make better use of energy, sunlight, and water. The maintenance energy requirement, as time goes by, it appears more, I guess I'd say the research literature is helping us understand that cattle that have better feed efficiency do appear to have lower maintenance energy requirements. So that's kind of cool. That's a kind of a development or revelation, I guess, of the last few years. Okay, so that now that we've been doing a better job of measuring and improving on feed efficiency over the last probably getting close to 30 years now, most of that work has been done in growing animals. Most of it has been done with a mixed diet, meaning concentrate and forage together. So pretty high quality diet. Most of the time is that kind of research or Progeny testing is done in diets that the cow never sees, okay, better quality diet. So the genetic selection tools that have come from that, of course, are related to and built for feed intake, performance, and feed efficiency for those growing animals in the post-weaning phase. And so, you know, we need to have a better understanding of how they relate to the cow and whether or not we can use them. And we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. But here's a lot of those that provide feed efficiency, feed intake, genetic tools, and of course, those are available today. And as I'm going to show you, I think they actually, many of them, Dr. Weber talked a little bit about the mature cow weight, EPD, and so on, you know, be very useful in terms of helping to control those costs and trying to build a better cow environment. Okay, so let's just jump into some different aspects of cow efficiency then. I don't know how we can address this without talking about cow size. Dr. Weber did a real nice job of kind of opening up this topic. But you know, if you think about cow size, really what we use it for is a proxy for feed intake. Is it the best thing we can do? Well, I think it's been very useful in the past. I think we can do better. And I'm going to show you just a little bit about more details about that here in a minute. Obviously, whole cow market value. Now, if I could find a cow or a set of genetics that would consume average to maybe even a little bit below average, breed average or herd average, you know, and select those animals, but sell them at a higher weight, so larger mature cow weight, I don't see any problem with that, right? Have moderate intake cows that weigh more. What would be wrong with that? If in fact some of the other traits that you're looking for with that, higher weaning weight perhaps, obviously higher yearly weight and carcass weight. So let's just talk about and take a quick look at what's going on right now in the industry. This is very familiar to most of you with this crowd. Dr. Gold has some of this in his slide set. But of the breed associations that report these values, here you see mature cow weight and yearly weight, genetic trend on the same graph. And as you can see, it's interesting that those are coming together in Harper breed. That's probably a very good thing, but substantial increase. In other words, we continue to aggressively select for growth in the industry. I had a good discussion about that last night. And the reason for that. Okay, this is the same genetic trend in the Angus breed. You can see, you know, this strong genetic correlation between yearly weight and weaning rates already been mentioned. Okay, so let's just look at the carcass weights then. These are federally expected carcass weight data, and the bottom line is kind of that Tennessee orange is the cow. All right. And if you look at the trend there, you know, a lot more variable in the cow herd, you know, due to drought and other things like that. But since 1978, if you look at the trend over time, and then you convert those weights to a live cow basis, cow size is increasing in our industry at about the rate of 7.3 pounds per year. So, in 10 years, if we don't apply more pressure to controlling cow size, our cows will be 73 pounds heavy. All right. Now it's interesting. It looks like that carcass weight has stabilized since about 2015. Will that trend continue? You know, I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see. I hope it does. The other thing that's kind of neat, I think, about this graph is that there's continued divergence between the cow carcass weights and the steer and heifer weights. Right? That's a good thing, and that probably contributes to the higher beef production per cow that I showed you early on. So that's a good thing. But if cow size continues to increase and we'll just use that industry average rate of 7.3 pounds, you know, as a cow calf producer, Dr. Weber talked about stocking rate, the importance of stocking rate. That's going to influence the grazing pressure on your place. And so, the strong genetic correlations between the growth rates, mature cow weight, and feed intake. Now, I didn't put them in this slide, but if you look at the genetic trend for dry matter intake in the breeds that produce those EPDs, you can see that that's exactly what's happening. With continued increase in yearling weight and carcass weight, we are having, you know, increase over time genetic trend for feed intake. Okay, so this is similar to Dr. Weber's presentation there relative to the stocking rate or carrying capacity. Here I assumed a 10,000 acre ranch in north central Oklahoma. And this would be, in our case, our part of the world, this would be a mid and tall grass prairie ranch example. I think I used a 30% harvest efficiency here to calculate these, which will be a little bit higher than our rangeland ecologists would like for you to use. Nevertheless, you can see the difference in stocking rate on that place that would be required to accomplish the same amount of greater pressure. Okay, now, if a lot of you have been in this business for a long time, and I'm giving that point myself, but if you started making genetic decisions in your cow herd when you were 25, and now you're 55, okay, 30 years later, and if you did nothing but selected bulls for growth, carcass weight, and by the way, mature cow weight, that will breed average or industry average, and not aggressive selection for growth, average selection for growth in your 30-year career thus far, you should have reduced, assuming your grazing system is similar to what it was 30 years ago, the productivity of your land is similar to what it was 30 years ago, you should have reduced your stocking rate by about 13%. In this case, it's 130 cows. Now, if you were selecting, now some of you have been in this business 50 or 60 years, and maybe that number needs to be closer to 200 cow reduction in this example. So, as Dr. Weber mentioned, it does definitely make a big difference. So the question is, though, as we do continue to aggressively select for growth without controlling mature cow size, is there a better way rather than using cow size as a proxy for feed intake? And so that's one of the questions we've been working on there at Oklahoma State. Do feed intake EPDs work for cows? We don't have enough animals to be able to generate nice genetic correlations like they would there at the Meat Animal Research Center. I am encouraged by this publication. This is a 2020 publication by Dr. Harvey Freely and the group at the Meat Animal Research Center. They did a really nice job. They tested heifers for feed intake and performance post-weaning. And then they brought those same animals in as 5-year-olds and tested them again as cows. And what they discovered, number one, was an amazing heritability, in my opinion, of 0.84 in those heifers and 0.53 in the cows for heritability for feed intake. So we can make some progress in this area just from that example. Average daily gain, moderate to high inheritance. The genetic correlations were very high for the heifers versus the calves. Okay, so I really am encouraged by that because this says we're going to test animals. Yeah, we should be able to test the young animals where it's more practical and less costly to test them as yearlings. Okay, and then my question is, so does the environment matter? in terms of those dry matter intake EPDs working. Our program the last few years has been focused on forage intake, and we've been stubborn about forage intake. There's a lot of people doing the mixed diet, feed efficiency work. We've been working on hay, cattle that consume hay, and minerals. Okay, and a little bit of concentrate, 1 pound to 2 pounds a day of concentrate from that green feed machine where we measure their greenhouse gases. But mostly hay and mineral. We use good quality hay so we don't have to supplement protein to confound that. Here's what we found so far. These are 5 of these studies are ours. 2's are ones from the University of Illinois, and ones from Dr. Foote there at the National Research Center. Okay, so these are the same animals tested on forage, and then in another period tested on what I'll call a concentrate diet or a mixed diet, like a full test growing ration. And what we discovered, or through the literature search and our own studies, what we discovered is that the correlation, of course, these are phenotypic correlations because they're not, they don't, each one of these studies not include thousands of animals. The correlation with for feed intake is moderate. In most cases, it's moderate. The average those is right around 0.5. Okay, and so what does that indicate? I think that simply indicates that if you are using the dry matter intake EPD to change or control feed intake in your cow herd, it's probably working reasonably well. Maybe not as good as we'd like for it to. We'd love to have an EPD for long stem, dry, moderate to low quality forage intake. That would be the ultimate, right? But without it, I think the dry matter EPD is probably working reasonably well for a cow based on the state. The interesting part of this that we discovered, and was a big surprise, is that the average daily gain in all these studies, the correlation basically has been 0. Okay, so what does that mean? I mean, which one of these have we been selecting on for 75 years? Average daily gain. And if this holds up, I would love to see a genetic correlation with thousands of animals. And that's really what we need. In fact, in terms of the dry matter intake EPD, I should say that a phenotypic EPD is generally going to be substantially lower than a genetic correlation. So I am encouraged by that in terms of that dry matter intake. But the fact that there is 0 correlation for average daily gain may suggest that we haven't made a whole lot of progress in terms of finding animals that would be efficient and cows that could build and maintain body condition in a forage situation. Now, if you've been selecting based on body composition, body condition, fleshing ability for many years, you've probably overcome that challenge. But without strictly focusing, not strictly, but focusing on that, including it in your breeding objectives, maybe we haven't made that much progress. And that's what this suggests. But there's a bell curve, right? The fact that the correlation is 0 is pretty exciting. Because what that means is there's some cattle, and we've seen this in these studies, there's some cattle that don't do either very well. We all know that. There's some cattle that do really well in one of these environments, and not so well in the other. But there are some cattle that do very well in both. And those are the ones we need to find. Okay, so this is one of Campbell Briggs's contemporary groups, heifers that we tested. These heifers receive hay and mineral, about a pound a day, a little like a 14% free pellet in that green feed machine. So this is a hay test. Okay. And I think this is really cool. We find differences like this in every one of these contemporary groups. If I can do this without making you all question. Let's see if I get my point here. We're gonna look at the row 17 pounds. It's a little bit above average on this group. That's 17 pounds per hour take. Now, I want you to notice there that there's one of those heifers that's gaining 1.4 pounds a day on hay and milk. And there's another heifer that's eating exactly the same amount and losing weight. Okay? Which one of those do you think is going to turn into a cow that can thrive in a moderate to low quality forage environment, build body condition, and maintain it? Okay, I think that's just really exciting. So, Lee Leachman said last night that BIF was a place where we explore, maybe, I'm not sure what he said now, but where you ask questions. Okay, so I'm going to ask this question, and I am not an animal breeder. There's maybe a good reason why we don't use the dry matter intake EPD for cows, and probably the answer is we haven't had these answers, and we need some of these bigger studies to look at those genetic correlations, so on and so forth. What I've done here is I've downloaded, I think there's 353 bulls met my criteria from the Angus website because it's such a nice large data set. My criteria was try to use proven bulls. So bulls that had at least a 0.5 accuracy for feed intake and a 0.5 accuracy for mature cow weight. So yes, I'm picking on the two traits that have the least amount of data, right? For very, very low amount of data. So understand that. Nevertheless, I still came up with 353 sires that met that criteria. Here you can see that trend line going through all those bulls, and actually, as I recall, that regression explained about 23% mature cow weight, explained about 23% of the variation in that feed intake EPD. Well, what I want you to notice is there's some bulls in particular, I recall. That bull right there, you were able to see that, is a 110 pound mature weight. So he's almost 50 pounds over the average. He would be expected to produce dollars that average 50 pounds over the breed average mature cow weight. But he's below breed average on feed intake. He would be expected to produce dollars that should consume less feed on average throughout the year. Okay, so once again, what's wrong with that? Now, you got, and compared to a cow over there on the left, I had it picked out earlier, but I'm not going to try to pinpoint it for you, but she was about 50 pounds below the average for mature cow weight, and eating, or would be projected from a relative standpoint, to eat about the same amount, consume about the same amount, at least the yearly progeny would be. Again, I don't think the feed intake in pounds from a yearling system is going to relate to the same pounds in a cow. I'm not trying to suggest that. I'm just saying from a relative standpoint, a sire that produces dollars that are below breed average for feed intake, and yet would produce cows that may be bigger and have, today $1.20 or so for that sale weight on those cows would be pretty nice to have when you multiply that times about 50 pounds of breed average. So just a thought, and probably maybe a possibility as we continue to develop these tools in the future. Okay, just a few things. I've talked to this group before about some of this data. Dr. Weber showed just a little bit of it in terms of if you are building better cows, maybe bigger cows, not necessarily better. What is the response in terms of weaning weight in a commercial cattle business. So let's just look at that right quick. I'll try not to spend too much time on this, but you know, this phenotypic trend in Angus and Charolais bulls, these are adjusted weights over time for those two breeds, because again, you know, they provide that data on the website. It's very useful to help us understand what's going on. Does that surprise you? That the phenotypic trend over time is stabilized. Bulls are not getting bigger at weaning, adjusted weaning weight. That suggests to me, this is from all over the country, of course, thousands upon thousands of cattle, suggests to me that the environment is limiting genetic potential at the ranch level. And we have lots of examples of this. Milk production in particular. Dr. Mike Brown spent his career looking at that and raised cows down there at the USDA station. And he saw the same thing. The environment limits the genetic potential of cows for milk yield in particular. Okay, several years ago, we published this paper using the superior livestock video auction data. We used all their cell lots that were identified as unweaned. Okay, and then the projected delivery weight was the proxy we used for weaning weight. And as you can see in that graph, in the north central and mountain west regions of the country, weaning weights, proxy for weaning weight we're using here, stabilized in about 2005, 2006. The interesting thing is in the southern part of the country, it continues to increase at about the same rate it did before this one stabilized, or this part of the country stabilized. Fascinating. So why would that be? Well, I'm not sure. I think maybe in the South, we're just still trying to catch up in terms of selection for growth. And that we may still be increasing because the environment has yet to limit that expression of growth. I don't know, we'll see the next few years of that stabilization. I really need to do this again in the States, get a little bit old with the last years that we evaluated in 2016. Okay, so last point on this, this is the capital appraisal performance software and 5-year rolling averages. So the 2000 column there represents the previous 5 years average. Okay, so 1995 to 2000 and so on as you go across that chart. What I want you to notice is that from 2000 to 2005, there's a nice bump in all of these characteristics. From 2005 on, there's essentially no change. So it agrees very well with the superior data, right? That the environment is definitely, this is North Dakota, the environment is, in some cases, in some region of the country, is definitely limiting cow-calf segment level growth. Now, of course, what happens when you take those cattle to feedlot and you take the lid off the environment? Well, they just explode. We had a good conversation last night about capturing the value of those superior genetics for post-weaning performance. And you've got to have that connection, it looks like, especially, you know, in many of these cases, in order to capitalize on that. But, you know, the take-home message here is simply know what's going on in your place, the weaning weight trend of your place, not that hard to collect and characterize that data like this. The cow weight, know what's going on in your place, and then the cost per unit of calf weight. That is kind of the holy grail. If you can get to that number, obviously very instructive. Okay, stock rate should be adjusted according to the truth outside and assuming lack of progress in the calf weight. We talk about capturing the value of superior genetics, whether it's through retained ownership or some collaboration. Okay, I want to talk just a little bit about milk. This is a lot of what we do. Justin, I tell groups that we are well known almost on a person basis, maybe not quite recently at the emergency room, because we milk cows, the milk machine, beef cows, eggs, beef cows, and we've had some incidents over time. But you'd be interested that these cows do kind of calm down the general action of just like dairy cows. So they do use it. So the first thing, and I've got this in the milk section, because most of the variations from this graph is due to milk. Some of it's due to maternal tissue gain. Let me explain what this is to you just for a minute. What I'm gonna do here is apologize. Well, not really, I'm just gonna tell you that I was wrong. But, what we had been, I had been in particular, I've been telling people for a long time, that according, I'll throw my buddies on the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, the Cow Nutrition Committee, I'll throw them under the bus, because they said in their publication, 3 publications in a row, over about a 25-year time span, no more than that, 30-year time span, that cattle with more genetic potential for output, growth, milk, feed intake, will, if you continue to select for those traits, you will wind up with higher maintenance energy requirements, which we talked about are about 50% plus of the industry energy use, maintenance energy requirement in cow sector. It's a big deal. So you will increase, that's what that committee said. I can show you, I'll pick it out here just a second, the actual statement. All right, and so they were watching all these trends, and I was around telling people, oh, gotta be careful because we're probably increasing one of the biggest energy sinks in the beef cattle industry. We're probably increasing cow costs. Well, guess what? Animal published this paper a couple of years ago, and this is what we see. Don't worry about the units. What you've got here on the bottom is that retained energy or productive energy. And so the more milk they produce, the more weight they gain, the further right on that graph, the lower their maintenance requirements were in our experiment. Okay, everybody get that? You follow me? So essentially, it was exactly opposite of what my colleagues in the National Academy Committee have been telling us for many years. Dr. Freakley at the Meat Animal Research Center, more like Meat Animal Research Center, always talking about that. He was telling, when I was saying this, or when we would talk, he would look at me and he'd kind of squint and he would say, are you sure about that? And you know what, it turns out, I guess I'm more convinced that we would probably need more work on this, but certainly our experiments suggested exactly the opposite. And the opposite is that animals that have more output in a given environment have lower maintenance energy requirement. In other words, they have more energy left over after they've taken care of maintenance to do something. Produce milk, produce a calf, produce maternal tissue weight gain, flesh ability, right? That's what that graph indicates. Okay, so there's that. Now let's move on to, so yeah, that kind of muddies the water, doesn't it? In terms of cow cost selection pressure. So let's talk just a little bit about milk and how does milk give an influence feed intake with the same committee. Here's a picture of the publication, which is required for beef cattle. They said that in 3 different publications, 1984, 1996, and 2016, they continue to indicate that for every 1 more pound of milk a cow produces, she'll consume 2/10 of a pound of feed more. All right, so you dig all the way back through and see where that came from. It came from dairy cows. They're already producing a lot of milk and already eating a tremendous amount of feed. And so it's been, you know, an interesting question whether or not this actually applies to beef cattle, but it's being used. I can't tell you for sure that it's being used in the multi-trait selection indexes on the cow side of things, but if it is, we're underestimating. Here's some of our data. This is Sam Callie's recent data set. And what I'm showing you here is just the equation that explains feed intake in this one setting. Okay, and according to Sam's data, if you look at this, every You've got, you can convert the body weight effect on feed intake in this study to 100 pounds, right now it's per pound. But, if you increase feed intake by 100 pounds, or I'm sorry, body weight by 100 pounds, you can increase feed intake by 2.3 pounds. Does that make sense? If you increase average daily gain in this set of cows, as average daily gain increased by 1 pound, feed intake went up by 4.4 pounds. If you increase milk yield by 1 pound, feed intake went up by half a pound. Not 2/10, half a pound. Okay, if you increase body condition score, 1 full body condition in Sam's study, feed intake went down by 1.75 pounds a day. And then interestingly, this is about the third study we've done, a contemporary group on cows, where the ribeye area of 100 pounds of body weight has a positive influence on feed intake of cows. Interesting. It's a pretty small effect. It looks like a big number there, but remember that's square inches of ribeye for 100 pounds of cow weight. So it's a pretty small number. And it's a relatively small influence, but it's significant. About the third study, we've seen that. So yeah, I don't know. We'll just have to see how that goes over time here. I did want to show you right quick. Every time we do a study like this, where there's with the average of cows, I showed you one really good pepper a little bit ago. I want you to notice this cow right here. In this study, this individual, you know, in this contemporary group, that cow is a rock star. Why? She doesn't stand out and produce a lot of milk. She's not real big. It's because she's kind of moderate size. She gained more than the average of the contemporary group. She produced substantially more milk than the average of the contemporary group. She had higher body condition than the average of the contemporary group, and slightly, I don't remember ribeye area. But maybe the big thing was that she consumed a little bit below the group average, not a tremendous amount below, but she is a very productive cow. You walk in the pen, you wouldn't be able to pick her out from any of the rest of them, but she's kind of a rock star in terms of efficiency. Okay, so here's other studies on that question in terms of, the contribution of milk yield and feed intake and building a better cow. These different studies that our group has done and others, it's averaging right about 45. So every 1 more pound of milk yield, we're getting about half a pound of feed intake. Now, if you do the math and calculate the energy that's provided in a pound of milk and the energy that's consumed in half a pound of feed, she's still underwater. Okay, so every 1 more pound of milk she makes is going to drag her backwards to lose body condition a little bit beyond that, because she's going to have to use tissue to make up the underwater part of that calculation, if that makes sense. So you can still overdo milk yield, and I understand your milk yield is not a milk yield feed. Okay, we probably don't have time for my little judging contest, but I wanted to show you another example of some of these groups. This is actually not a contemporary group. We tested about 27-year-olds with a group of about 23-year-olds. We found these 3 cows. Really interesting differences in terms of just their phenotype. Most everybody looks at that and say, number one, I think this points out, you can see the body weight of the 3-year-olds right at 1390, 1362. These are big cows. They're almost 1,400 pounds as 3-year-olds. We're trying to help. Okay, and the 7-year-old there at the bottom, cow C, is 1465. She's a big cow. She's really good, right? Look through her data and tell me that she's not a good cow. I mean, she is tremendous because she does not eat you out of house and home, and she is extremely productive. Okay, and notice cow B, if you had a ranch that had the appropriate grazing pressure with 1,000 cow Bs, you could run 2,000 cow As and apply the same grazing pressure. Now, granted, that's not a genetic evaluation, right? I'm showing you some extreme examples, and we've got ways to go to get there, before we can make changes like that. There's a lot of opportunity. Okay, so just to summarize real quick, aggressive selection for growth without control from the certain outside of the feed intake obviously will result in heavier mature weights, greater appetite, and less resilience, I think. Donald Brown and I had a discussion about robustness in the cow-calf industry. And this probably puts us at more risk if we continue down this road of creating, and I would add no field to that. You subject your operation to more risk and reduce robustness in a cow-calf enterprise. Because, you know, when the drought comes along, it's pretty frequent in our part of the world, you're gonna have to sell more cows in order to maintain appropriate grazing pressure on your land base. All right. Where, Justin, thank you. I guess we're gonna have a conversation here in a little bit, so thank you very much.